Hello, I'm Chris Brett from Eurogamer, and welcome to today's developer session for Battalion 1944. Today we have Joe Brammer from Bulkhead Interactive, who's coming along to talk to you about making a World War II shooter that actually feels properly old school. He's going to be doing a Q&A at the end of the session, so start thinking of some nice questions if you have them. And yeah, let's give a big, warm round of applause for Joe Brammer.
Thanks, man. Hi, everyone. So this is the most like Britney Spears I've ever felt. This is weird, and that music was weird for me. But I'm really just here to talk about FPS games. I don't write down the script to my talk, so you'll have to put it with that. I like it to be nice and natural and just talking about how much I love FPS games. So I'm Joe Brammer. A few years ago, I set up a company when I left university, when I was 22, I think, with a couple of guys in Derby. You'll have to put on my accent, being kind of American. I grew up in Texas, but I'm from Coventry, and I'm not Belgian or Dutch. It's just weird. Yeah, I think we started out this company, and we made first-person puzzle games. I'm 24 now, so I've been doing this for 2 or 3 years, and we were making first-person puzzle games in Unreal Engine because we knew that we could make a good mechanic and repeat it, put it on Xbox, PlayStation, and PC, and we could take that, make enough money to make the next game, And the first one meant we could make the second one. And on the first one, we worked for zero money. We weren't getting paid. We had a tiny closet of an office with a window that opened that much with a lot of PCs in, and that gets really hot. And that meant that we really learned how to work hard and be very humble about what we do. After that experience of working like 9 till 5 in an office and then going and working in bars from like 7 p.m. till 2 a.m., I did not want to do that again. So that was like 6 months of grueling work and eating just pot noodles. I think my weekly shop one week was like £3, and it was just like the trick is to make noodles. You get like the flavored noodles and then two of the cheap pots, and you mix them together with salt and pepper, and you got yourself, it's a good meal right there. My mom is watching this. So yeah, I'm slowly losing my voice as well, but ultimately, those 2 games led us to making Battalion 1944. Halfway through the Turing test, if any of you have played that, which I hope you have, we decided that we're making first-person puzzle games to get to the next stage. When that next stage is, we don't know. But every lunchtime, for an hour, we would rush to the shop, rush back, get the food, eat, and then boot up Call of Duty 2, boot up Call of Duty 4, Red Orchestra, all these amazing games that are kind of that are timeless, really, or arguably not timeless. We booted them up and played them, and they were just amazing games to play at lunch for an hour with friends, and they were so competitive and they felt so good. And then the dirty secret is I don't actually like first-person puzzle games that much. I didn't do any of the design work on any of them. We have an amazing designer who did that, who loves all games, but that's not me. I love FPS games. I know so many. I play as many of them as I can. And one of our guys said, well, what if the window for this FPS game we want to make is now? What if this is it? A year ago, so February, I think. So we put 3 months of work into making a very bad prototype with 3 guys, pulled them off of our main product, the Turing test. And that was a big risk for us, and we put a bit of money into it. And it worked, and you guys responded to it, and people realized that, yeah, we do want something different in FPS games, and we do want to change the way we do it. So really, that's where we came from, and that's a bit of our background. And just a little image. I think we got some images. And Battalion is aiming to kind of bridge the gap between developers and players because it's very easy for big companies to say, "Oh yeah, we love our game. We're super passionate about it," and you've heard it a million times. But in this instance, we made this game because no one else was, and we just wanted to play it. We just really wanted to play that game, and I'm so glad that in this week at Rezzed, we've seen thousands of people come through and enjoy it, walk out screaming and swearing, saying how amazing it is. And this is like a weird moment for us because we're used to making these puzzle games where people just kind of walk up and just go, I'm stuck, mate. And I'm just there like, it's a puzzle game. You're meant to be stuck. That's the point. So now we're actually getting people coming in, enjoying it with their friends, playing it, and it's such a fantastic experience to see that. But there's a big point that I want to make, and a lot of you have heard about new World War II games that are coming up and ones that are playable in the res now. But Battalion isn't a World War II game. It never was meant to be just a World War II game. Initially, we put that on quite hard, but it was never intended to be that. Battalion is an old school game. It's a classic game, and we've never really seen this in shooters. We've seen it with platformers. Everyone here has seen the platformers that have just dominated Steam, PlayStation, and Xbox for the last 5, 6 years, since Indie Game the movie came out. And they're not easy to make, but they're a lot cheaper to make in the sense that you don't need a team of 30 people working on it. So they took old games like Mario and turned them and remade them into what they are today and gave them different twists and quirks. We're doing the same thing with massive shooters. Everyone in here, I assume, loves shooters in some ways, or at least likes a shooter. To us, Enemy Territory, Quake, Unreal Tournament, Call of Duty 2, the list goes on forever, really, but all of these games were just an awesome part of our childhood and growing up and playing old school games that we thought they were just games back then, but now we're trying to define what an old school game is. And when we're designing this game, we can't just make something that's like Call of Duty and like Battlefield, because ultimately there's 2 of those already. We don't need another one. For the first time in the games industry, we're seeing a full cycle, just like fashion and any other industry. Seeing a full cycle, and we're getting back to FPS games, going back to, we've just come through the sci-fi stage again that we saw with kind of Doom and Quake, and now we're getting back to World War II. And I think what we need to be looking at is that for Battalion, World War II is literally just the palette for us to make a classical game and an old school game. I'm trying to define what that is, and I basically spent a year trying to figure that out. And to a lot of people, old school, I can see a big range of ages here. I said to a kid yesterday, I think Battlefield 2 is an amazing game. I love Battlefield 2. And he's like, yeah, I love old school games too. Bad Company 2 was awesome. I almost hit him. I'm not kidding. Bad Company 2 isn't that old, but neither was the kid. I'm 24, and there might be some, let's say, older people in here. And you know who you are. And they think that Doom is old school for them. But me, I didn't get a chance to play Doom. I've played it like having to like rewind time on my PC to get it to run. Like I've played it, but I didn't grow up with it. And it's very difficult to define it because everyone kind of sees it differently. But we've come up with a few things after sort of not reverse engineering, but going through these old school games, going through as much of the code that we could, breaking them down and turning them into what we think is the things that makes them click and the things that makes them unique and playable and enjoyable. So it comes down to these 2 things, really, the imperfections and the rough edges. As new games come in, as new Call of Duties come in, new Battlefields come in, they polish the edges, they clean it up, they sand it down, and they make it so you would never see a problem. Nothing would break. It's a happy game experience. You're on this one train track of fun that is exactly how they designed it. Some of the best things in some of the greatest shooters of all time come from bugs and broken things. Has anyone played a surf map in Counter-Strike? That's nothing but a giant bug that they will not write out now because there's an entire community of people that love playing that. But on that note, that bug is part of strafe jumping. And strafe jumping is absolutely massive in a lot of games now, purely because of an accident that they couldn't get rid of in the Quake engine when they tried to make a sci-fi shooter, and it ended up that's how you move now. You look at bunny hopping in Counter-Strike Source, okay, that was a little bit ridiculous, but you were able to jump and time it so that when you turned and jumped, you would gather speed and keep moving. We believe the reason when you jump out of a building or something in any FPS game, when you land, you have a second where there's a little bit of dead time. You know what I'm talking about, where you land and then you can't just run straight away. It kind of pauses and then you can go like you're stuck in the mud. We think the reason that happened, because it didn't happen in Halo, it's the only one that I can find really that doesn't do it or hasn't added it later. The reason it didn't happen is because Call of Duty, the original one, was using the Quake engine, and that is how you bunny hop. So to get rid of bunny hop, instead of fixing the code in it, they added a feature so that you can't move for a second after you land, which then became the defining way of movement in video games and FPS games today. So there's all these things that we've been finding throughout the process that make games better and make FPS games better. Like crouch jumping to get onto a box. I have a real frustration with, especially Battlefield these days, pressing a button to climb, to do something, to do an action, press to do action, and it plays some amazing camera animation, and it throws you around, and it tries to immerse you, and what it actually does is take you out of the moment, because when your camera's being dragged around somewhere, you're not doing that action. The game is. So it needs to come back to, okay, there may be a few little things that look a bit weird, and they're not exactly reality, but the player is the one playing the game. Not the game. The game is not playing you. You're playing the game. You're telling it what you want to do. You don't tell the game to make you do something. You want to tell the game what you want to do, and then it happens. One-to-one movement, exact movement, and that's what's making old school games work. So when we broke it down, we looked at movement, skill-based stuff, anything from, you guys, I'm sure you're all in here because you really want to get a bit more skill-based gameplay out of your FPS games. But I mean, my favorite phrase of what we coined recently is tethered reality. If anyone's played any of the old school FPS games, I don't think anyone ever thought, I am a World War II soldier landing on D-Day right now. That never happened. The graphics weren't anywhere near good enough. And as graphics, the amazing work that DICE does has pushed the industry forward. It's also pushed players' expectations and mentality forward. People start to think, okay, well, I want to be more real and more immersed. But immersion isn't thinking you're a soldier. Immersion is being focused and in the moment and enjoying that game. If you look at the definition of it, it's not believing you are something else. That's insanity. This is just, when we say tethered reality, we mean things like our soldiers can strafe jump, which when you see them, they look like they're flying. Some of them, if you get very good at it, it looks a bit strange. But when you're in the moment, when you're immersed in it and you're playing it, it just feels so good. When you have that one-to-one movement nailed, when you disconnect from the fact that this is a World War II game and you treat it as just a palette, then you notice that this just feels good and you're just playing it. And you don't care because you don't think you're landing on a beach in D-Day. You don't think that's happening. But you know that you're enjoying it and this is fun. And that's got lost with FPS games as they've gone forward. And then finally, one of the really key factors here is it needs to be simple, but it needs to have some depth, which is a bit of a weird statement. But really, if you look at things like environments in old games, they were forced to be very blocky because of technical limitations. But those very blocky environments also made it easy to read as a player just moving around in first person. They made it easy to understand. There was no things obscuring your view like this. There was a wall, and instead of having some really crazy bush that kind of you can see them through but they can't see you, it was just a block, or it was just an alpha in a plane. And that kind of thing we've tried to bring back in, and I think we released something like 15 minutes of gameplay over the last few days, and it was just raw. No, we said we're not going to do a trailer, we're not going to do cinematics, we're not going to do any of that, we're just going to release the game so people can see what it is, what an old school game is. And that does mean turning down some of the quality, some of the amazing things we could do with the Unreal Engine, just because the gameplay is the bit that matters. That's the bit that drives games. There's enough amazing looking games out there that we don't need to try and compete with that. We just need to be a good game that people enjoy playing. Red Orchestra has been going for years now, absolutely years. And let's be honest, those graphics, even when in their height, they were never that great. But you meet those guys and they understand what their game is and what they want it to be, and their fans understand it. And it is one of the best shooters out there. So just to kind of confirm this, we don't think AAA games are bad at all. We need them in this industry as much as in the future, going forward, they're going to need us. Because they do something very, very well. Yes, they have supply drops and unlockable game-breaking, what we would consider game-breaking weapon unlocks and that kind of thing. Yes, they have kill streaks. But, yeah, I can see you all don't like kill streaks. Okay. Well, they need that because they do that very well. And frankly, there's 18 million players that absolutely love it. They absolutely love that, and they do an excellent job. Call of Duty is not a bad game just because we're getting a bit bored of it. The difference is we want 1 million dedicated fans that really understand what old school is and really understand what being a classic game is. And the problem is, you actually can't really put it into writing. This is a difficult thing to do. But what you can do is you can go and play Battalion, and you can play a game like that, or a game like Strafe, which is remaking Quake. You can play them, and you can understand that this feels like an old school game. It looks like Unreal Engine, but it feels like an old school game. And there's so many things we do, like changing the way we do rendering. We throw out Unreal Engine's amazing rendering tools that we've gone, look, we can make this amazing thing. And we go, cool, let's put the old one in. Because the old one's closer to, you don't have this millisecond of latency between the mouse and the screen. And that millisecond is absolutely massive. And making an old school game is just an accumulation of thousands of tiny, tiny, tiny changes into one game. There was no big fix that made it better. There's no big thing that FPS games, old school FPS games do. There was lots of little things. My favorite one to give an example of is, has anyone used the Car 98 in COD 2 or COD 1 or anything? So when you aim down the sight, we made it so if this is the gun, it came straight up, and in like one frame, you'd be able to aim down the sight and see your enemy. But when we broke down old school games like Call of Duty, we realized that there's a little sight on the end of the gun, and it doesn't just come straight up. The first frame, the gun turns like this, and then it comes up. And we changed this tiny thing, and all of a sudden, we had some guys giving us feedback, and they said, that's it, it's done. That gun is done, it feels amazing, this is exactly what it was. And it was like a two-hour job to change. But there's so many tiny little things we have to find, and that's what we need our community for. That's what we need our alpha for. That's what we need early access for. We are depending on people to understand what early access means and not think that it's a cash grab or any kind of other alternative motive other than we need your feedback. We need you to tell us, what is this going to be? What feels good? Feels good. Because we can't define what feels good without a consensus. And we're not trying to, we're making sure that everyone's on the same page, but ultimately, we want to know what feels good. And that's what old school games are about, the way it feels. So if you guys have any questions, now's the time to go, I guess. I think we have a microphone somewhere. There's a microphone somewhere. There we go. Oh, thank you. You don't have to make it awkward for me now. I've got a question. That's good. You got a spotlight as well. Nice.
Hello. Firstly, thanks very much for the great talk. Enjoyed it. One thing I want to ask is if you think that this type of game where you are deliberately cultivating a smaller, but yeah, maybe you can hear me.
It's okay. I didn't know if it was a special thing that I couldn't hear or something.
I'm going to quickly repeat that. Do you think that the ability to do this kind of game where you focus on a very dedicated but slightly smaller audience, you said kind of the 1 million rather than the 18 million, do you think this is a particular time that allows you to do that other than, I don't know, other times in the games industry with like early access and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it comes back to what I was saying about the kind of the first cycle of the industry. What's happened for the last 10 years, we've had 2 FPS games that we've been playing nonstop. And they have changed a little bit each time. But now what we're seeing is the sort of FPS revolution, I like to call it, of people saying, well, I could buy one game for £55, or I could buy like 4 independent shooters I can still go and find a server and play. And that's kind of worth more money to me. People aren't necessarily entirely sold on the one game as much. We have the competitive guys who will be, but then you have someone who will play a bit of everything. And not only that, but I think the engines are becoming so much more advanced, and people are, the way we share information as developers is becoming so much easier that, I mean, you guys seen Day of Infamy? Most people probably think we're competitors. We just share stuff all the time. We're all friends, and the squad guys from Squad, they gave us their smoke. We have a smoke grenade from Squad just because they were like, yeah, use this if you want. So now is the right time that we're sort of seeing subgenres form in FPS games instead of just this is FPS games. You've now got like tactical realism games. You've got teamwork-based games. You've got MOBA shooters, a lot of them coming out. And then now I think us and maybe Strafe have this old school shooter kind of vibe. And really, I think this is the best time to do it. We've seen the full cycle. Battlefield 1 has kicked it off amazingly by doing some incredible work. I'm really excited to see Call of Duty come out. I think their single-player campaign is going to be one of the best ever. But I think, yeah, it's really exciting.
Cool. Thanks very much.
No worries, man. Anybody else got a question? Please? Cool. Well, I think that's it then. Thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks so much, Joe. Appreciate it. Are you genuinely 24?
I am 24. The beard just kind of fools.
You have a beard and you've made 3 games. I've never felt old before.
I have a beard because I've made 3 games.
Nice. Okay. I have been asked to point out that there is a Mathia free session at 5 p.m. today that I don't think is on the printed schedules for some reason. So if you're interested in that, please do come back. We've also got the creator of Xenonauts coming up next. I'm going to ask him some nice questions about making an XCOM game if any of you are into strategy. And yeah, thanks once again to Joe. Big round of applause.